On paper, he was an absolute god in his home country. We are talking about an undefeated world champion boxer with 27 fights, 27 wins, and every single one of them by knockout. He was a national hero, a multi-millionaire, and personal friends with the president of the country. But while millions of people were cheering his name under the bright arena lights, his wife was living in a quiet, terrifying prison of her own. To the public, he was a symbol of national pride. Behind closed doors, his own family knew he was becoming one of the most volatile and dangerous men on the planet. And it all started with a split-second mistake on a motorcycle years earlier that quietly rewired his brain. Just a quick heads up before the story begins. Every single name, location, and piece of evidence you're about to hear is completely real, taken directly from public federal court transcripts and official police records. None of the details have been fictionalized or altered for drama. Because of the serious nature of these real-world events, viewer discretion is advised as we walk through the exact steps of the case. In the early morning hours of April 18, 2010, a man walked calmly into the lobby of the Intercontinental Hotel in Valencia, Venezuela. He approached the front desk clerk and made a quiet, chilling statement. He had just killed his wife in their room on the third floor. The man was Edwin Valero, a world-famous professional boxer, an undefeated champion with a record of 27 wins and 27 knockouts, and a personal friend of Venezuela's President Hugo Chavez. The hotel staff immediately contacted local authorities, setting off an urgent response by the Carabobo State Police. When patrol officers and homicide investigators arrived at the hotel, they were directed to room 324. Upon entering the room, police found a horrific scene. 24-year-old Jennifer Carolina Vieira de Valero, Edwin's wife, lay dead on the floor. Forensic technicians quickly cordoned off the room, transforming it into a high-priority crime scene. The immediate focus of the responding investigators was to secure the area, preserve transient physical evidence, and document the positioning of the body. Forensic analysts noted that the victim had suffered multiple catastrophic stab wounds to her neck and upper torso. As the physical evidence inside room 324 was being processed, law enforcement officers took Edwin Valero into custody without incident in the hotel lobby. Given his immense physical strength as a professional prizefighter, police utilized maximum restraint protocols to ensure officer safety during his arrest and transport. He was moved to the police lockup facility in the north-central state of Carabobo. Because Valero had already admitted to the crime to hotel staff and the initial responding officers, investigators focused heavily on gathering objective forensic evidence to support a foolproof murder charge, anticipating that an admission made under the influence of heavy intoxication might later be challenged in court. Forensic pathology units worked through the morning to establish the exact timeline and mechanics of Jennifer's death. Medical examiners determined that she had been stabbed 3 times, with the fatal wounds severing major arteries in her neck, causing rapid exsanguination, a medical term for bleeding to death. The murder weapon, a knife obtained within the hotel premises, was recovered by crime scene analysts and bagged for latent fingerprint processing and DNA matching. Investigators also noted significant bruising on the victim's body, which pointed to a violent physical struggle preceding the stabbings. While the homicide investigation was underway inside the hotel, detectives began tracing the steps that led the couple to room 324. They discovered a chaotic trail of events spanning the previous few weeks. Just 24 days earlier, on March 25, 2010, Jennifer had been rushed to a hospital in their hometown of Mérida, suffering from severe bruising, a punctured lung, and fractured ribs. Hospital staff recognized the signs of severe domestic abuse and alerted local authorities. However, when police arrived at the hospital to take her statement, Edwin Valero intervened. Valero created a massive disturbance at the hospital, threatening the doctors, nurses, and responding officers. He aggressively insisted that his wife's injuries were the result of a clumsy fall down a flight of stairs. Under extreme duress and fearing for her life, Jennifer repeated the false stairway story to investigators. Because the primary victim refused to press charges and claimed the incident was an accident, prosecutors faced an immense hurdle. Under the legal parameters at the time, without a victim's statement or independent eyewitness testimony, the police could not immediately detain Valero for the assault. Recognizing the boxer's volatile state, a local judge ordered Valero to undergo a mandatory 6-month psychiatric and drug rehabilitation program at a specialized clinic. Because of his close political ties to President Hugo Chavez, arrangements were fast-tracked to fly Valero to Cuba for specialized treatment. However, Valero missed his scheduled flight on April 7, 2010, after getting into a car accident while driving drunk without a license. Instead of being forced into custody for missing the rehab flight, Valero managed to evade strict police supervision, rented a car, filled it with cash and cocaine, and coerced Jennifer into fleeing Mérida with him. They traveled across states before checking into the hotel in Valencia, entirely off the radar of local law enforcement until the murder occurred. As detectives compiled this timeline, they began investigating the root causes of Valero's extreme psychological decline. Interviewing extended family members and reviewing historical medical records, investigators built a profile of a man whose brain chemistry had been profoundly altered years prior. On February 5, 2001, at the age of 19, Valero had been involved in a devastating motorcycle accident in Venezuela. He was riding without a helmet when he collided with a vehicle, fracturing his skull and causing a severe cerebral hemorrhage, which means bleeding directly inside the brain. Surgeons had to perform an emergency craniotomy to relieve pressure and remove a massive blood clot. Family members told investigators that Valero's personality changed permanently after he awoke from that surgery. The mild-mannered, dedicated amateur boxer suddenly developed severe mood swings, explosive anger, and intense paranoia. Despite the underlying brain injury, Valero's physical recovery was remarkable, and he was cleared to turn professional in 2002. He became a global sensation, winning his first 18 fights by consecutive first-round knockouts. However, in 2004, when Valero attempted to advance his career in the United States, a routine pre-fight magnetic resonance imaging scan, commonly known as an MRI, revealed the lingering unabsorbed blood clot and structural damage from his 2001 accident. The New York State Athletic Commission strictly refused to license him, declaring that taking blows to a brain with an existing cerebral injury was far too dangerous and could result in sudden death. Banned from fighting in the United States, Valero became an international journeyman, winning world titles in Japan, Mexico, and Panama while growing increasingly bitter and paranoid. Investigative files showed that as Valero's fame and wealth grew, so did his access to heavy drugs. He began heavily abusing cocaine, alcohol, and heroin. The combination of chronic substance abuse and structural brain damage from his old motorcycle accident triggered severe, unmanageable psychosis. He routinely told friends that the police, rival boxers, and phantom enemies were actively plotting to assassinate him. He drove recklessly through streets at high speeds, convinced he was being followed, and carried illegal firearms for protection. This escalating paranoia was turned directly onto his family, resulting in unprosecuted assaults against his mother and sister, and the systematic terrorization of his wife, Jennifer. By the afternoon of April 18, 2010, prosecutors in Carabobo had built an airtight case against Valero for the first-degree murder of his wife. They possessed his initial spontaneous confession, the physical murder weapon, forensic evidence matching the victim's blood to his clothing, and a documented history of domestic violence that established a clear pattern of behavior. Because of the overwhelming physical evidence and Valero's public stature, the Justice Ministry prepared for an expedited trial, bypassing the need for a lengthy grand jury investigation. Valero was held in an isolated holding cell under suicide watch protocols due to his highly agitated and intoxicated state. The judicial process, however, was abruptly cut short. At approximately 1:30 a.m. on April 19, 2010, less than 24 hours after his arrest, an inmate in an adjacent cell heard a strange noise and alerted the turnkeys on duty. Guard staff rushed to Valero's cell and found the boxer hanging from the cell bars. He had used his own sweatpants to fashion a makeshift noose. Though he still showed faint signs of life when the guards cut him down, emergency medical technicians were unable to resuscitate him, and he was pronounced dead at the scene from asphyxiation. Because of Valero's high-profile status and his connections to the ruling political party, the sudden news of his death in police custody sparked massive public skepticism and rumors of foul play. To ensure absolute transparency and rule out any allegations of state-sponsored assassination or police brutality, the Venezuelan federal prosecutor ordered a comprehensive post-mortem investigation. On May 14, 2010, forensic teams exhumed Edwin Valero's body from his grave in Mérida. A panel of independent medical examiners conducted a meticulous secondary autopsy, examining the trauma markings on his neck and checking his tissues for unauthorized toxins or signs of physical struggle. The secondary forensic analysis concluded definitively that the cause of death was suicide by hanging, confirming the local police department's initial reports and officially closing the criminal investigation into the tragic lives of Edwin and Jennifer Valero.